Hey everybody, welcome back to The Odds Couple. I'm Sid Rosenberg, sitting alongside expert handicapper, the esteemed Marc Lawrence, my dear friend and of course publisher of the spectacular Playbook.com. Marc, good to see you.
Good to see you, Sid. We're getting down to Super Bowl time.
Yeah, we're getting close. A long season and a very exciting season, but we are down to the Final Four. The surprising Jets, they'll visit Peyton Manning and the Colts in the AFC title game, and Brett Favre tries to get back to the Super Bowl when his Vikings take on Drew Brees and the Saints in the Big Easy. Quite a story here about Brett Favre. He's now back in the NFC Championship game for the second time in 3 years. Of course, 2 years ago with the Green Bay Packers, he lost at home to the Giants. This time he takes it on the road with Minnesota. And it's been a kind of a weird season handicapping-wise because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Marc, seemed like early on lots of the heavy favorites were coming in.
Exactly right. You're right on the money with that, Sid. And in fact, congratulations on the great year you had in the NFL this year. I should be asking you who you like on this show. But with regard to the favorites being that way, it's been that way a lot of the times in the National Football League season. What happens is, out of the gate, here come the favorites. They're just not priced high enough. They win convincingly, and what happens the second half of the season, here come the underdogs. And the reason the underdogs do that, you know why?
I have no idea why.
The reason the underdogs do that is because of value. What happens is these favorites are packed or added to by the odds maker. All of a sudden, there's a lot of value to the underdogs, and it's also a return to the norm factor. Things never ever last when they're way up here, and they never last when they're way down here. They always come back to the mean. That's why your underdogs are teams to watch in the second half of the NFL season.
Kind of like baseball, like when Derek Jeter starts off in April hitting 180. You know by the end of the year he's going to hit 300 because inevitably everything comes back to where it belongs.
You can book it. There's no question about that.
Right.
A slow start, a career. If a guy averages 300 in his career and he starts out $150 for the first month of the season, you want to bet on that guy.
Right.
Okay. Exactly right. That's fantasy baseball.
Yeah, exactly right. So when you look though at the landscape, and we're talking about two big games this weekend, and you and I will be talking next Wednesday about the Super Bowl, but the landscape of the NFL, teams that really underachieved this year, teams that overachieved this year, I think it makes it doubly difficult now because the NFL is so difficult to predict, even though it had a pretty decent season. When you go into next season's win totals, when you try to handicap the season before it starts, like we'll do the next 6 months out in Vegas before they start counting in September.
Well, that's a good question, Sid. And what you're going to look at is you're going to look at why teams underachieved. Did these teams perform better on the playing field and didn't get the result on the scoreboard? If they did, these are teams you want to watch. On the flip side, you want to look at teams that overachieved and did it with phony, what we call winning with mirror type stats.
Right,
okay?
right.
So examine these teams and see how they got their record. Did they do it conventionally or did they do it with smoke and mirrors? That's a good starting point for the next season.
Yeah, because it always interests me. I find it very intriguing when you and I talk about certain games, and you'll pick a team that has a bad record, and you'll go, but wait a second. 3 of the last 4 weeks, they outgained the competition, and then sure enough, that next week, a team like the Rams, for example, had a couple of weeks in a row where they covered. You were on them both times because you saw that they had outgained the competition. I don't think the guy out there sees that on a week. He just looks at the record and goes, wow, they must be awful.
Sid, that's one excellent point that you make, and what it is called second half handicapping. What you want to do is you want to compare stats of teams, how they're playing right now in the second half of the season as opposed to what their season-long average is. If they're improving, you've got a team that's maybe under the radar. If they're declining and going backwards, it's a team you want to fade, especially as favorites. Good teams get out with good records and start sliding. Witness the New York Giants.
Right.
Sorry to throw that out there.
And the Broncos, too.
Exactly
they were
right.
6-0.
They both started out terrifically, okay, but they started sliding. And you look at their second half stats, they were completely at the bottom of the league. So what you do is you analyze these teams, put a pulse on these teams, and see how they're playing second half of the season as opposed to overall.
Amazing. There actually is a science to it.
Yes,
and,
there is.
You are the mad scientist, by the way. We're going to come right back, Marc and I, and we're going to offer our best bets for the weekend. He's going to pick one on the AFC side of things. I'm going to pick one on the NFC side of the things. We're going to tell you next who's going to play in Super Bowl 44 right here on The Odds Couple.